Hey YouTube, I've been accumulating some various bits of information over the last few days about home invasion prevention and planning, just general preparedness when it comes to avoiding home invasions or what to do if you have it happen. This is going to be obviously in a podcast format, and it's going to be just a very casual kind of talk here about this topic. And so I have a bunch of notes, and the way that I wrote the notes down is just basically whenever I found out more information, I just added it to the list. So there will be some bouncing around a little bit, but I'm going to do the best I can to kind of stay on topic. 3.7 million people in the U.S. are dealing with a burglary every year. It's just amazing. 1/3 of those people were home during the break-in. 65% of offenders are known to the victims. So these are not typically strangers. Most of the time, you know the people, or have you seen them around the street? And 61% of offenders were unarmed. So I guess that's a good thing, but nonetheless, they still are trying to break into your house. So with that being said, I guess we need to look at some just real simple or basic protocols, planning, and even like just basic ways of dealing with this. So first off, a protocol could be as simple as if you don't have a way to see the outside, then you don't open the door. You don't even answer the door unless you get some type of confirmation from those that have maybe like a passcode. It could be something they say, something they do, such as a knock on the door, a very unique knock. But overall, you need to have some type of protocol. And of course, we typically teach our kids don't open the door, especially, if it's a stranger. So a lot of adults, they don't even take their own advice, and they just go up to their door. If someone's knocking, they just open it. And then all of a sudden, you've just given people that you don't even know a lot easier access to your home. Also, there's a lot of people, and sometimes I do this myself, you get comfortable in your home and you feel like, my car is parked out front, I'm in the house. There's no way that anybody's just going to drive up and just walk in my house. And a lot of people don't lock their doors when they're at home. And I'm not talking about just the actual knob that you turn to open the door. I'm talking about like using a deadbolt. And that's going to be really important here, to use your locks on your door, even if you're home. And I'm not saying that you have to be paranoid about this, and you can't go outside because you're afraid that someone's just going to pull up and get you at gunpoint and demand that they take you in your home and they can steal things. It does happen, but you don't have to be paranoid about, being out in your yard and enjoying your property. Just have a protocol in place. So if someone does drive up on you, you can do something about it. And that's where concealed carry comes in. In the places that's legal to carry a firearm, well, maybe you should carry a firearm even on your own property when you're doing things, especially if you have a larger property and you may be 5, 10, 20 minutes from your home, depending on how large your property is. And my property is just large enough that it can take quite a few minutes to get from the very furthest point of my property to where my house is. So in that case, I have to have some type of contingency if I'm going to be prepared of what happens if I have a threat in between there, at the end of my property and where my home is. And I mean, it could be a threat from nature, for example. It could be a wild animal that has rabies or something and it comes up on you. It could just be a really hungry animal. It could be something that involves, people. Maybe some person is drunk or is under the influence, or maybe they're just evil, and they just wanted to take whatever you have and so forth. So you have to have a contingency there. Now, let's jump to door frames here. I know this is kind of a quick jump, and I'm going to be jumping a little bit here and there, but this is just how I have my notes written. So this is just, to me, the most organic way that it came out, researching all this. And it was kind of a mix of watching seminars and different talks and podcasts and talking to the local police and just a lot of my own ideas. And I just put it all on paper. So I have lots of pages here. So this may not be the shortest podcast that I've done. So door frames. So a lot of homes, especially the newer homes, they don't really have a very thick door frame. And they're not really attached well to the king jack, which is the actual framing of the doorway before they actually put the door frame in. Now, this is a big problem because the average door frame these days only averages about a half an inch thick. And so where for example, your hinges and various points of contact with your locks, they're only secured with, these half-inch screws. And they're not going through and through typically to the king jack stud. And so what you can do, this is very simple, is to replace all your screws and just do it once, one at a time. And so that you don't, mess up the overall squareness of your door. And so you take one screw out at a time and you replace it with a 3 to 4 inch screw, a nice steel heavy duty screw. It's up to you, of course, how far you want to go with that in terms of the quality of screw. Just get yourself a really good quality though, if possible, 3 to 4 inches. I prefer the 4 inch, but maybe the way that your house is, maybe a 3 inch is fine. But you really want to make contact to the studs behind it. That's the whole point here. And so, another bit of trivia information is that, from 9 to 5 is when most people are at work, and that's where most people, typically the time frame that they break into a home, because people are not there. But like I said earlier, 1/3 of the people are home during a break-in, so it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed that no one's going to be there. It's just typically that's when they're looking for an easy break-in, because there may not be anyone around to be, seeing them or to stop them. So another thing you have to be kind of mindful about is that people acting like other people that, may represent a certain thing. It could be a mail carrier or a certain service, for example. There's a lot of people out there that will just put on a uniform or buy a uniform and basically just kind of act like that they have some type of something for you, come up to your door and bam, they get you to open the door. And they may have other people working with them that are hiding beside the doorway that you just can't see, and they'll rush the door. So it's always really important to not open the door unless you really know who they are and you're expecting someone. So once again, use the deadbolts when you're at home. That's what they're there for, to be used for some safety. Now, once again, with deadbolts, there's all kinds of deadbolt locks out there. Sometimes they're referred to as barrel locks, but there's different kinds out there. And these deadbolts, a lot of them are sometimes just half an inch, that the actual throw of the bolt itself. And you want to upgrade that if you just have a very short bolt, bolt in your deadbolt. So a 1.5 inch deadbolt is going to be a lot more preferable. So you can pretty much get through the trim of the door frame into the actual king jack stud. And there's a lot of, I'm not sure what this is called technically, but the receiving part there's usually like a metal receiver that receives that deadbolt, the bolt of the deadbolt into the frame. And you want to put at least, 3 inch screws there as well to really anchor that and secure that point of contact with the bolt. Now, the hinges, you definitely don't want to have the pins of your hinges on the outside of your door. A lot of houses have that. I've seen a lot of older houses have that in particular. But you want your hinges, where the pins are on the inside of the door. If you want to go the next step, which is advisable, is to have security hinges. Now, when someone's building your homes, builders typically never even tell you about the option to have security hinges. They typically don't cost much. And once again, most, main doors have 3 hinges. And what you can do is just take one off and replace it, and then go to the next and replace it with it. So you're not taking the whole door off at one time. When it comes to doors, solid doors are going to be obviously the best way to go for your front and back doors, or any other doors that have access to your home. Now, it just depends on where you live or what type of material makes more sense to you. Fiberglass just may make more sense. Maybe you want a steel door. Maybe you want a solid wood door. There's just all kinds. So that's up to you. But typically speaking, there is a difference, but sometimes the difference isn't that much in terms of strength. It just depends on the quality overall and how much you're paying for it typically. So, you want to reinforce solid door when possible. Also, security doors obviously make a lot of sense. Just make sure they're anchored in really well. Now, I get a lot of questions about this over the years doing this channel, and that is about door bars and door braces on the inside. I think they're a very good idea. And so on the interior, you definitely want to have something to help reinforce that door. Even though you may have all the points of contact anchored in with long screws and everything's all good, you really want to kind of have something additional to help that door stay where it's supposed to be in the locked position, so it can't be kicked in easily. They also have these long strips of metal that can be put on like wooden frames that could be anchored in also to the king jack stud. So you might want to look into that as well. That really helps to anchor the point of contact with the deadbolt. That particular bolt can really get in there, and it's going to be really hard to kick out the side of that trim. What about bars on the interior, in terms of the windows? Well, it's not for everyone. Not everyone even wants that. They don't want to look at that. But there are some that are very low profile, and you can have them painted, or you can paint them yourself to the color of the trim of your window. I mean, there's some of them that it's kind of like you can look through them very easily. They're not like 50 bars vertically or something, or horizontally. It's just maybe just 2 or 3 bars, and it's just enough that would really slow someone down, or maybe completely stop someone from even coming through the window. But if that's not your thing at all, and you're like, no, I'm not going to put bars inside or outside, that's just ridiculous. That's your choice. They do have a window security film. And so 3M is kind of more like here in the U.S. kind of known for that product, but there's definitely other brands. So check into that. But this film, though, typically is attached to the window. The best way really to put these in, though, is to actually put them inside the frame. You're going to have to get the product up in and secured into the point of contact of where the frame of the window makes contact with the actual glass. You can put it topically on the glass itself without going into the window framing, but it's not going to hold. You got to think about if someone hits it hard enough, the whole window will just break out. So the whole window film or the security film feature just keeps, the glass intact after you hit it with a high impact. So it's just keeping things from shattering, but it's not like a complete impenetrable barrier. And if you don't install it right, it's not going to work very well at all. Dowel rods in the windows and sliding doors. This is a really easy way to go. Sometimes you can, with enough force with the crowbar, break the locks on some windows. Some windows are not made very well. And if you have a dowel rod, though, and the person isn't really wanting to break glass, maybe it'll bring too much attention, make too much noise, the dowel rod really kind of just jimmies the window shut, so even if the lock is broken or overcome, you can't really, most people aren't going to have enough strength to break a thick 1/2 inch to 1 inch thick dowel rod, especially made of like hardwoods. I've seen different types of hardwood dowel rods that are just amazing. They're just super strong. And a sliding door is the same way. You can jimmy in the track a nice piece of a dowel rod, or a metal rod is even better probably, in there, so that, even if someone is able to pop the lock, they can't slide the door. So they're forced to pretty much just break the window or break the sliding door. And they may not want to do that, So it may slow them down or just, repel someone. In terms of security systems, yeah, I mean, even if you don't have one and you don't have any plans on having one, and you may want to do a little bit of fibbing with your neighbors possibly, or with other people that you know, and just say that you do have one. Just kind of spread the word that you have one, and don't make a big deal about it, but just say, oh yeah, I got a security system and some cameras. And, you know, even if you really don't have one that's operational, you can get dummy cameras that you can install. They have little lights that blink, and you can get stickers put on your door, and you can get lawn signs. And just by advertising, just on a low level, like, you don't want to go crazy about it. You don't want to have 15 yard signs that say, I have a security system, but maybe have one close to the house near the front door, and one a little bit more in the yard, so it's easily seen when you drive by. It's just something like that, some kind of low profile system, but still, it's still visible. And you'd be surprised, the statistics really show that people avoid homes that have security systems and cameras, motion alarms. So, you know, it's something to consider. You know, you don't even have to have a system, but it's still very beneficial to have some of the signage and so forth. So this is another bit of information that it was just common sense, but, you know, a lot of people don't do this at all. I know so many people that they don't even park their car in their garage, but yet, because over time they have so much junk they accumulate that they can't even get their car to fit in the garage. That's typically the truth of the matter, but they won't tell you that. But don't leave your garage opener, the door opener, in the vehicle when you're parked outside. Because if someone broke into your car, they could take that, open the door. Now, some people, they do an override switch on the inside, so it disables the remote control, but a lot of people don't do that, you know. So if they can open up your garage door by just breaking into your car, or maybe you left your car unlocked by accident, they can access inside your garage to steal things there. And guess what? The garage door, you know, the door that's in between the garage and that goes into your home, that doorway, it isn't really that robust, typically speaking. You know, a lot of homes are built with kind of like an interior door there. It's not even really a strong door. So you want to reinforce that door as well if you have a garage that leads to your home, or it's attached to your home. But yeah, it is not recommended to keep your garage door open or in your vehicle when it's not parked in your garage. Let's see what else I have here. So yeah, reinforce the door that enters your home from the garage. And okay, here's the next part here. Police response times. And this varies depending on where you are. And of course, the funding of your police department and all that. So like, I live in a rural area, and I've mentioned this on the channel before, but you know, during the day, the police response isn't like horrible. It's typically 5 to 10 minutes, you know, but I'm in a rural area. I mean, it takes a few minutes to drive anywhere. So that's not really that bad. But at night, and this is something that, you know, is not exclusive just to my area, but the local police department is off. Like there's no one there. There's no one. There is no police at night, at least in my local town. Now there is, of course, police that's available. That's like, that does a county-wide, you know, type of patrol, and that would be like the state police or the sheriff. But once again, their response time is not good unless they just happen to be patrolling your area when you call them for help. You know, it could be substantial time frames that you have to wait, and we're talking like 25 to 45 minutes. So yeah, you want to kind of maybe learn about this in your area. What is the police response time? Because you don't want to be sidetracked and think, oh, you know, I just call them and like a minute later they show up. Man, it could be quite a while before they show up. Let's jump into just very common sense deterrents. Gates, you know, and fences. I mean, if they can't hardly even get on your property, I mean, they're not going to have a really good success rate on getting in your home. So lighting products, you know, having motion lights, or just lights that stay on all night, like security lighting. My new neighbor recently just put in this new security light on the side of his house on this large pole. It's part of actually the electrical pole, but it was a really good idea. And the darn thing is really bright. It's one of those new LED overhead lights, and it's great. I'm really glad he did that. And so it really lights up the whole side of not only his property, but the edge of my property too, which is a very helpful thing. Dogs. Now, I love animals, and I just don't care for like continuous barking. But there's a lot of dogs that, they're not going to bark all the time, only when they see things that are not, comfortable to them. And so, yeah, dogs on the outside of the home, and in the inside of the home, especially at night, you might want to bring them in. Maybe not. Maybe you just keep them outside depending on the weather. But dogs can really deter people. And there's been so many interviews that I've watched over the years. People that are in prison, and they, how they get interviewed, and they say, what are some things homes that you avoid in particular, when you go to rob them? And they say, security signs. I try to avoid places that have cameras, and dogs. And it was like one of the top things, because there's a lot of criminals that are afraid to get bit. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, dogs have all kinds of bacteria in their mouth. You can get all kinds of problems by having a dog bite. And so there you go. The next part here is glass in the doors. So we're going to jump back to doors real quick here. It's really not advisable to have any glass in the door. Now, you may say, well, okay, what about the availability to see who it is physically, see. If you really have to have glass, you go with laminated glass. It's going to be the best way than some kind of tempered glass that really is not strong at all. It'll just completely just shatter. Good quality laminated glass is going to be a lot stronger. But a solid door is best. And I'd have to say there's window film that you could also put into your door glass, but it isn't really going to be typically better than laminated glass from what I've understood. Also, you have peepholes that you can install. You can simply just drill a hole in the door wherever your eye level is, and I've done it to my door. And you just want a wide range of view peephole. And when you're not using it, you want to probably put some type of barrier on it on the inside. Some people just simply have a little piece of tape that they put over it. Some people have little like latches that kind of come down so that people can't use the reverse peephole viewer. And believe it or not, it is a real thing. There's actually viewers that will allow you to look into a home, even though whenever you've tried to do that on the outside, look into a peephole, you can't see in. But there are actually like little devices that will reverse it to allow you to see in. So just for more privacy and just to be, kind of cautious, you want to kind of just cover your peephole when you're not using it. Okay, so the next thing is another statistic here, that the average person that comes into as a burglar or as a home invader is going to be under 25 years old and will be a male. So that's just a statistic here to think about. So these are the most common people, under 25 and a male. And 85% of these people are considered amateurs at this. They're not professional burglars. They don't have like 40 years of experience and all this stuff. And they cite that the number one reason for doing this activity, this criminal activity, is that they have desperation. So, of whatever reason. I mean, they could be a drug addict and they're desperate for more money to get drugs. It could just be that they don't have a job. And what you'll see, though, is when the economy gets worse, there's more crime because there's more desperation. 83% of the time, the people who are, that are caught, they report in these interviews, 83% of the time that they checked for an alarm or an alarm sticker. So there you go. This just kind of reinforces what we just talked about earlier, that they do look for alarm systems and camera systems and dogs and so forth. They're looking for things that may be a problem for them. Because believe it or not, most criminals are looking to avoid confrontation. They just want an easy smash and grab. They don't want to get bit by a dog. They don't want their picture to be taken. And of course, that's another option as well, is to have doorbell cameras. It's more common than ever now, but a few years ago it wasn't so common. But yeah, you can get them and they're not that expensive. And basically you can even have them set up to your Wi-Fi in your home that someone steps up within a certain distance of your door, or they step onto your mat of your front door. There's a little sensor and it'll take a picture from the doorbell, and it can actually, send it to like your text message or an email account, however you want to have it set up, and you can see who's at your front door even if you're not home. So that's really good. Of course, it's a little bit more technological and not everybody's into that, but it's an option. And let's go back to the door again. I'm going to be jumping back to the door a lot because the door is really the gateway to your home. What about door chains? Door chains. I mean, it's more of an illusion of safety than anything else. It's what I would call a facade of security. Typically, they're not sturdy in terms of the chain links, not reliable. If you look at a lot of these door chains, they're not even welded. The actual links are not even welded together. They're just bent. So, you know what? I wouldn't even mess with those. There's a lot better ways to secure the door. What about dedicated door alarms? A lot of times you see this, that there's these little alarms that have their own battery system in there, and they have a little magnetic contact. And this is going to be separate than your main home security system if you have one. And basically, you can just put it on whatever door you want. It could be a bedroom door, any front door, back door, any door. It could be out in the shed even, barn door. And it'll just go off when that contact is broken. And so they're really loud, and you can get these for literally like $1 or $2 at some dollar stores. And they are ridiculously loud. It will wake you up, no doubt about it. I mean, if you're within a few rooms away of this, you'll definitely hear it for sure. And that would also probably scare someone away if they just bumped their door enough and they were trying to breach your door and it broke the contact for a moment. It's going to go screaming and probably could scare someone off, or at least alert you to get into a position so that you're not so vulnerable, especially in the middle of the night. What about the dog inside the home? So we talked about the dog before. The dog in the home, it's going to be very beneficial if someone comes up to the door, starts shaking the handle to see if it's unlocked, or see if there's a response from a homeowner. Because a lot of times these perps will do that. They will test the waters, and they'll just kind of see if anybody's there. But if a dog starts yapping or barking, and it doesn't really matter if you see the interviews of various criminals out there, they pretty much say the same thing over and over. Big dogs and little dogs, it doesn't really matter. They don't want to get bit by anything. They don't like all the noise, and they'll typically leave. But yeah, whatever dog you have is probably going to be good as long as it barks. They also have a barking speaker system. It just barks like a dog that you can get that will detect vibrations on the door. So if someone's starting to jiggle your doorknob, this speaker will go off and just start barking. And you know how like the door in between you and another person muffles a little bit, so you can't hear very, very crisp types of noises. And that's what makes this speaker system so realistic in sound. It sounds like it really is a dog barking. So yeah, the better ones have longer bark cycles, so it doesn't repeat as much. So you want to watch for that. But most people, when they hear the barking sound, they're not going to stick around very long. So that's an option if you don't want a dog or don't have a dog. Maybe you live in an apartment that doesn't allow animals. A dog barking speaker, and a lot of these use the vibration, like I said, or some of them also have infrared. And so they can detect the heat of the door or right around the door area. So it's pretty cool. Another bit of advice, and this is super simple, I've said this many times on the channel over the years, is don't be the easiest home to break into on your street. Like I have a few houses on my street that don't have deadbolts on their back door. I kid you not. Maybe it's just because, I'm in a rural area and they don't think they need them. Maybe the door just didn't come with a cutout for a deadbolt. I don't have a clue. All I can tell you is talking to my neighbors, getting to know people, and, walking around their house or, being invited in their home to talk and chat. I've noticed things. And Yeah. So in relation to some of my neighbors, my house is like a fortress. Now, I try not to make it look like a fortress. I mean, you wouldn't really know it's a fortress on some level until you actually got up to the front door or try to break in, and you're like, wow, I'm not making any progress. But the whole thing about it is you don't want to like stand out like you're trying to protect something, like you're going to stand out in that way. But you also don't want to look like, oh, it's just like a really easy place to just kick the door in, or look at that, they don't even have a deadbolt on their door. So just don't be the easiest home on your street to break into. Another thing about doorways is going to be the option of having security screen doors. Now, that's a really good option. Some people, they just don't have maybe the money to upgrade their entire door, the door system. And so if you can't do that, maybe the first step while you're saving up for more of a stronger door, or a better quality door, is to work on the screen, the screen door. Screens typically are like super flimsy. It's typically the screen is just in there by like a rubber gasket. It's like a friction fit. And there's a lot of things that you can do to really enhance that by getting a little more sturdy frame of the door and enhancing it with like, typically what you see is like a security wire mesh. And they're like either tack welded in there or are seamlessly welded, or they have bolts that keep that screen in there. And it's very, very, sturdy. It's secure. So that's one thing to slow someone down. So, yeah, I mean, overall is recognize the threat and prepare for it. So if you look around in your area, what do you see as the common problem? Is there someone that goes by and, for example, steals things from the yard? If so, then maybe just a fence and a gate could really slow someone down or prevent that from happening. Is there someone that is literally just breaking out windows, when people are at work and crawling through them, or something like that? You can kind of say, okay, if windows are our target, how can I, make my windows more undesirable? Is it something that I could plant? Maybe you plant a tree or a big thorny bush in front of those windows that look to be the easiest to break into, or do you put window bars, or do you put some type of security film, or do you set a camera right outside the window area? What can you do? There's a lot of things you can do. Now let's jump to home defense weapons. In my opinion, the long arm is going to be the best way to go. It gives you the most capability, the most, and I dare to say, stopping power. I mean, of course, it just depends on where you hit the person if it's going to stop them or not. So shot placement is a big deal. But a long arm, and it's your pick. I won't even get into that debate. I've already said my piece, quite a while back. That I would prefer an AR-15 with the proper load. But I can have that because in my environment, I don't have the problem as someone that may live in an apartment, for example, because I actually live in a house in an urban, I'm sorry, not an urban area, but, it's in contrast to an urban area. So, a rural area that have lots of space around me, having something with a little more power isn't going to be a big problem for me. It could be for someone else, So just be aware of that. So a long arm for me is the choice, but you may choose a handgun. Maybe that's just what you feel comfortable. Maybe that's all that you have. That's fine. Handguns are awesome too. You should probably have both, a shotgun or a rifle and a handgun. You should also consider, if all else fails and you don't have the means to get that first shot off, maybe a whole group of people just rush the house and overcome your defenses for some reason. You may want to have something else. If you can't even get your firearm into battery, some type of defensive tool, like just as simple as a club or a bat or a baton, something that you can grab and just start swinging, just start to get some space for, between you and them. What about pepper spray? Now, in different homes, you have different systems of air circulation. And there are stories that people go to use pepper spray in a self-defense, home defense situation, and just happens that the fan is on right above them, or the air conditioner just kicks right on in. And guess what? They deploy their pepper spray, and that spray, at least part of it, comes right back in their face. So I don't really recommend pepper spray at all, even outside the home, to be completely honest with you. What I personally do is I buy the larger canister of pepper gel. And there's all kinds of brands out there. Some of them are really, really more, efficient than others. But the Saber Red, I believe is how you say it, Saber brand, is what I go with. A lot of law enforcement uses that. And so pepper gel is what I prefer. You have pepper foam, which is probably a lot better than pepper spray, but the foam I think is a little bit less effective. I wouldn't want to get sprayed with it, but it's something that you probably just settle with the gel, and you're probably going to be a little bit better off. So that's just what my 2 cents. Flashlights. These days, flashlights are so unbelievable in terms of the brightness. They can definitely be used as a potential weapon. I kid you not. There are flashlights that have 10, 20, even more thousand lumens. I mean, if you get hit by 20,000 lumens and your eyes are kind of adjusted to the night, I mean, that's going to really mess you up. Especially if your flashlight also has a cannulated bezel that you can strike with it if you had to. You can do a lot with that. Also, keeping a phone that is nearby, because of cell phones and they emit radiation, even when they're not being used, it's not the best and safest thing to keep your cell phone like right next to you, like on your nightstand, for example. I would recommend keeping your cell phone a little bit further away, but that's something that you want to check into on your own. Some people say, well, I have a landline right next to my bed. Just know that people can cut your landline from the outside. It's very easy on most homes. Typically, the landline connection is almost at like eye level or lower. So it's real easy to have some wire snips and just snip and you have no phone connection. So definitely you want to have at least a cell phone so that you can call for help. And we're not talking about just calling the police, even though that might be for some people the first phone call. Especially if you have time to make multiple phone calls, you may want to call them first, but you may also want to call your neighbor first, especially if you're close to your neighbors or you have a good relationship with your neighbors, and you call them and say, hey, I need help right now. Someone's in the house. I'm fearful for my life. I need some help ASAP. And a lot of neighbors will help you, they'll come to your aid. The only problem, it can get really messy if you call the police and your neighbor and they're both responding and your neighbor's there with a gun trying to help you, and then police show up. They may think that your neighbor is the person breaking in, and I've seen that, personally a few times. It can get really messy. So just try to figure this out. Maybe have a plan with your neighbor ahead of time of how to deal with this. Because it can get really dangerous, and there have actually been neighbors shot by police. Neighbors that have been there trying to help their neighbor shot by the police because the police thought that they were the perp and they had a gun, and it's just a mess. So be careful with all that. Have an exit plan from your home. So if you need to leave, to avoid confrontation. If all possible, you want to avoid confrontation. You don't want to be like, bring it on. Yes, there's a lot of states that have the castle doctrine law that allows you to stand your ground, and it doesn't demand that you need to leave your home. If someone breaks in, you can stand your ground and shoot the person legally. I'm not against that to some degree, but at the same time, if you can avoid, a confrontation, especially if you have kids with you, it's going to be better overall. You're going to be avoiding a lot of the court problems and all these issues. And I know that some of you guys are going to be saying, hey, shoot the person that breaking in. I'm not against that, but at the same time, the way that the world is set up right now, and there's such a liberal mentality on how things are, you're going to go through hell on earth, most likely, especially in some areas, more so than others, and dealing with especially if you killed the person, you're going to have to go through quite a bit of stuff. Plus, you're going to have whatever your firearm that you used during this whole encounter taken from you. It's going to be used as evidence for the court hearing. So And this goes into what kind of firearm that you should use again, because if you have a decked out AR-15, for example, I mean, super tactical, right? That's in some locations in this country, it's going to be really frowned upon versus if you had a single shot shotgun. Now, I'm not telling you to have a single shot shotgun. I'm here to simply say, just be kind of mindful that there's going to be different opinions about different firearms just because of how they look. And that's sad, but that's just how it is in this society. There's a lot of ignorance. The next thing is garbage discipline. You know, if you get a new big screen TV, don't just take the box and just throw it next to your garbage can. Break that box down and put it in the garbage can. Don't allow anyone to see that you just bought a brand new flat screen TV. Okay. If you can't fit it in your garbage can, then cut down the cardboard box that the TV came in, for example, and put it into a separate garbage bag so that you can't see. Okay. And so just don't make your valuables visible from the road. Or even if someone walks up to your front door, don't make it so that someone can just look through the window and just see something of high value. Don't make it that easy. So that's kind of what I have here today. Just some bits of information about home invasion and overall just prevention. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comment section if you have any additional ideas about this. I know I didn't cover the whole spectrum of home invasion and techniques and all. There's a lot to be said about this. But overall, though, this is just kind of a real general overview that gets someone started. You know, getting started is a big deal. And so, once again, thanks for your support. Catch you later.